Hello and welcome. Today we are going to review a video of Ben Folds composing a song in 10 minutes. I wanted to review this song because I thought it shows some kind of cool insights into the creative process for anyone who's interested in writing your own music. We can kind of talk about some of the stuff he does here. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. I'm Dr. Zach. Grab a cup of tea and join me. Okay, so a little bit of context. He walked on stage, they took a random key from the audience, which they decided was A minor, and then they took a random phrase out of the book, also from the audience, the program. And so he sings that at the end of this little introduction. So he's gonna start kind of figuring out what he wants to do right now.
Designed to be flexible. These new spaces are all designed to be flexible. Okay, let's see. Okay, so now let's see. Go.
Okay, cool, right? So a couple of things there. We started with just a few chords. I think he ended up adding one. So we have, in total, we have A minor, we have F, we have F major, we have C major, and we have E major. So this progression mostly focuses on thirds. We have a third between A and F, then we have a fourth between F and C, and then we have a third between C and E major. Now that C might be like a first inversion one chord, but with the way that he played it there, we had that C major quality. And you notice he went through the melody twice, and even then on the second time he did some things to kind of create some variety, right? He went, he had a little slide in there. At the very end, he kind of really built it up. So there are things that he's already doing to try and create some variety between the two presentations of the chorus here. This ends up being the chorus at the end.
Arco, go bum bum.
So this is pretty simple. He's just taking the chord, and instead of using just the triad from the chord, he's doing the first, the fifth, and then the ninth up above. So in this case, A, E, and B, and then he's going to F, so then it's F, C, and G after that. A really common thing, there's a lot of people in the comments, we might take a look at those in a bit, that were like, wow, the musicians, they have such great ears. But this is stuff that we covered in first and second year theory, probably more so getting into second year theory. So I would hope someone who is at the sophomore level, completed their sophomore year of music school, would be able to identify what this is. So clearly these musicians of course are talented, not trying to discount that, but picking it out by ear is something that they're really well equipped to handle.
Ends, reeds, let's just take flutes, oboes, and bassoon, clarinets, and this can be in whatever octave spread you want. And we're gonna go, let's say, no, let's just make it a harmony where you go. No. I'm taking them back, just clarinets. Two clarinets go E, concert E, and G, go. Let me hear that and make sure I don't suck. That's it. Again, let me hear that with the cellos for a moment. 3, 4.
Okay, and then there's a problem there that he fixed. Problem kind of in quotes. The things I wanted to point out here is that he tried a couple options, right? He was like, okay, let's have all the winds do this thing. And he had this like, boop, 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 boop. He was like doing this ascending pattern. And then he was like trying to figure that out. I was like, no, hold on, let's just do this like simple harmony. And so he did this little kind of oscillating figure. And then he even dialed it in more specific. Okay, wait, just clarinets, not all winds. Let's just do the clarinets, right? So this is part of the creative process. You try something, you think, let's do something different. I think in this case, he chose to do something different because of the time constraints that he had. He might have liked that first idea better, but thought, no, it's just going to be easier to do this other thing. Sometimes, though, you really like an idea, and it's like the first idea that you kind of came up with, and so you're super excited about it, and then it just doesn't really fit in the song that you're writing. So it's important to recognize that and say, okay, this is a good idea, but I'm going to save it for another time because I need to figure out something else to put in this song. So that can be really tough to do, but it is important, right, to try different options. Even if you have something that you really like, try to see if there's something else that maybe would fit a little bit better.
A second to create a whole song for you. And I'm going to take something back about the cellos. Let's just do that one cycle on each one. Bum 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 bum. Then F. Dum bum 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 bum. And then in the clarinets. Okay, so let's try that. 2, 3, 4. Okay, this last one on the cycle, go. So move that G up. Anyone has a G, move it up to G sharp.
Okay, so there was that quote-unquote problem that I said. So if we were in an A minor chord right before this last chord, which is E major, then we wouldn't have a G in that chord unless it was like a seventh of A minor. Instead, I think what we have here is that C major chord. So he's saying raise that fifth of the C major up to G sharp. So then we get that lift into the E major chord, which will then take us back around to our A minor chord, that 5-1. If you notice too, right, like I said, how he had his initial idea of the cellos doing that pattern for 2 bars, now he's condensing it down to 1 bar. So now we have these kind of 4-bar groups with 1 chord on each bar. We have the A minor figure, then it goes to F, and then the C, and then the E. So we have these groupings in 4 bars, which is a really common, right? That's probably the most common grouping in Western classical music. So he's sticking to these kind of formulas, right, to make this really simple. This chord progression isn't anything too innovative, and right, he's using the dominant chord, the E major, to go back to A, which is super common. We're keeping it in 4-bar groupings. So this all makes sense since he has to write this piece really fast, right? It makes sense that we're sticking to these kind of traditional conventions.
Okay, violins, first violins, let's go A. And then the second violins go, so you'll go E, E, B.
So right there, he actually changed what the first violins do. I think the musicians picked up on it, but that just goes to show you again, right? Once he started adding in another part, he realized, oh no, it would work a little bit better like this. So instead of the violins going from like A, C, they're going A, E, and then the second violins start on that E and then go down to the B after that. So then what he's doing here is he has the violins in fourths. So even though we've had pretty traditional stuff where you have, 4 chords, we have 1 chord on each bar, so there's 4 bar kind of groupings. He's adding these different kinds of harmonies, right? He has the 9th in there, and he also then is harmonizing the violins in fourths. So these are just, pitches outside of your normal kind of triadic harmony that can add interest to a piece without a whole lot more like effort, right? It just works out a little bit better. It sounds really interesting to listen to.
I'll give the violist a little timing shizzle here. Just go 1.
So at this tempo, and a, right? So they just have like 16th notes off the beat. So again, syncopation adds that little bit, like you said, that timing. So it gives a little bit more drive to it. And they're just holding basically pedal tones throughout, right? They're just playing that E to A, bum, 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 bum. So again, we're keeping that fourth kind of idea. And if we think back, the fourth first appears when we have the change from F major to C major. So there is some precedent for this fourth to be in this piece, right? And then this is a really common thing to do in pop, just to have that same kind of tone that goes through the whole progression. It can kind of help tie everything together. And it's also interesting to hear how those pitches play against the other chords. But again, it is kind of common, so that would be something where we might look for a little bit of variety if we had some more time. Okay, so that was the double bass part, and that was kind of a cop-out because it's just those steady like eighth notes on each chord, which is a real like kind of electric bass kind of thing. But, like he said, it works. He's running out of time. He needs to get this piece together. I understand why he did it. But there is so much more room when you write a bass part to move the bass around a little bit. Yes, this is really common. It works really well. It is really effective. That's why people use it. However, as a bass player, I would encourage you to see how you can use the bass part a little bit differently, because that can also help your piece kind of stand out is by what the bass is doing.
Who want like a drum set, you know what to do. Then I'd say, if there's a trumpet player that wants to take a solo after the first chorus when I run out of ideas, then you can just take that there. Okay. So let's, and then you can bring anyone in and out that you want to, but I think I'm probably almost over my time. Well, I had to write a song in 10 minutes, so let's just start at Tootie.
Okay, so here he's just asking people to kind of do what they know how to do. Like drum set, there are some established patterns that the drummer could just pick like one of those and figure out which one fits best. Then he said like, oh, a trumpet player can take a solo, right? So you can write for this kind of stuff in your piece. Now, drum set stuff is a whole nother world of like notation. Typically, what you want to do is write as much detail as possible in your parts. So just to like put rock pattern and then have no other information for the drummer will not result in as like polished of a piece as if you include some extra stuff like some fills or where you want them to line up with the rest of the orchestra or band or whatever it ends up being. And then also like providing a spot for solos, right? That can be something most often seen in jazz, but it doesn't have to be just jazz where improvisation it takes place. You could write it in any piece that you're writing for, even if it's for orchestra, right? So that's something where you just have to accept that when you write a solo part, or if you write a part that's aleatoric, which means chance as in kind of like a improvisatory solo, you just have to realize that it's probably not going to be what you want, and it's better to write those kinds of things out. But if you really want that kind of effect, or if you wanted to evoke kind of like a jazz setting, you definitely can use that as a technique. Here, of course, I think he just used it because he was out of time. So he was relying on the strengths of the musicians to make this piece come together so quickly. So, takeaways from this. He starts with one kind of idea, and if you notice, the idea he played at the very beginning actually doesn't really sound anything like what it sounds here at the end, which I encourage you to go check out. I'll leave the link in the description. But he was able to add to it, right? He kind of figured out the chords that he wanted, he solidified that, he gave the cellos, right? He started kind of from the ground up. He started with the lower instruments and worked his way up. He had a lot of contrast. Even in this short little bit, he had a lot of contrast, right? We had the rhythmic thing in the cellos, ba-dun, da da da, right? But then that's contrasted with these long notes, kind of going back then into it. Also, when they play the song, he kind of directs them for dynamics. So he tells them when to kind of get quieter and get louder. And that provides some contrast, some variety to just this regular kind of 4-chord structure. And if we had more time, then that's where we could try to start playing with the groupings, right? Like we could rotate the chord progression. So we start on a different chord and then move through the progression. Instead of doing everything in groups of 4 bars, we could see if we could add a 5th bar somewhere, or maybe take a bar out so it's only 3 bars. So we get these kind of different feelings throughout. Again, that's for like after you come up with these initial ideas, right? After you've been trying some stuff out, then you can try to play with different things. Okay, well, what happens if we change a grouping? What happens if we change a figure? What happens if instead of starting with the rhythmic thing in the cellos, we start with held notes and then add the rhythmic thing for bars 3 and 4, right? So you can use all the ideas that you come up with to provide that variety in your piece. And your original ideas should have some element of contrast so you can help kind of play those ideas off of each other and move them around and try to surprise your audience with what you come up with. So those are just like some quick thoughts on writing music, or maybe some people might have resonated with this for like writing pieces or other kind of art, how you come up with something and you kind of wrestle with it until you find something that you like, and then even then you might have to throw that away or save it for later to bring something else new in. You know, it's a process. For me, the most important part is just showing up and doing it, because that's the only way that something gets done. Even if you create something you don't really like, you're one step closer to creating something that you do like. So it's all part of the process, all part of the journey. It's a blast though, and I hope some of you watching out there have as much fun creating. So that'll be all for today. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.